Something else that we're following up for you, of course, to do with campaigns. And like I mentioned earlier, that campaigns really continue in parts of the country. And President Uhuru will be in Eldoret and in Nandi. He goes to Eldoret to give some donation to KCC. Remember, he was in Bungoma yesterday, and he's really seeking to galvanize the vote for farmers in that area. All right, something else is what's happening in Machakos, and another Jubilee team heads to campaign in Machakos. It will be led by Jubilee aspirants, among them Rachel Nyamai, Regina Ndambuki, Moses Kuria, and Johnson Sakaja. We'll be getting the latest in regards to that here on News Center. All right, so remember, you can interact with us. We're having a very robust conversation here in studio. Joining me right now is Moses Chelanga. Thank you very much for joining us. He is a lawyer. And also I have the Electoral Law and Governance Institute Executive Director, Felix Odhiambo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start with this conference that's beginning today. From your assessment, how well is IEBC prepared for these elections? From everything that they've been doing, they've been giving constant updates, but is it convincing to you of how the process is already?
The timelines has been very tight, and IEBC have done its best to make sure that these elections are credible. But again, as it can only be said that IEBC has to earn its credibility, because the process to an election is as good as the results, because there are so many issues which started from procurement of Kenya KMs for the machinery, to procurement of now the ballot papers, auditing of the voter register, and also voter verification. All that process have had its own challenges, and IEBC has to convince us that they are going to deliver a credible election. So for now, I can say I can give them 49%.
49%. Yes. Felix, is that the same ranking that you would give IEBC? They've really, they came into office just the other day, at least for the commission. They've been handling quite a number of things like Moses outlined. How do you think they're doing?
Well, I think the Chebukati Commission over the last few weeks tried their best. I was one of the people who had reservation with the new team. Right. One, the timing when they were appointed into office, but also some of the decisions that they made soon after coming. But I've observed keenly, and I follow very strongly issues of election governance, and especially issues of the readiness of the preparedness of the Electoral Commission. And I'm encouraged, with the commitment that the chair has shown, the commission and not the secretariat. I think the secretariat has made some very catastrophic decisions in the past, but I think there is some goodwill on the part of the commission chair and the new commissioners, and I think I agree with Moses. My rating in terms of their preparedness would be 45%, not 49.
Yeah, slightly below. Is a bit slightly below.
Exactly, and it is in large measure due to the conduct of the chair and the conduct of the commission. I think the 3-day conference is a step in the right direction. Some of us have been calling for it as early as 2014, 2015. And in as much as it's coming late in time, I think it's a step in the right direction. Don't forget, the Medizak Commission never convened a post-election evaluation or a multi-stakeholders conference following the 2013 elections. So this is really the first time that the country is having a national conference to look at the elections, and unfortunately it's coming 56 days to the elections.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think nevertheless it's a step in the right direction nevertheless.
Oh, all right. Yes. So the percentages that you're giving are almost at the same place. So what is it that they're not doing right? What is that... what would it take for them to get to a higher ranking? Because really 56 days to the elections, and they need, with the background that we've had of our elections here in Kenya, I think they would really need a higher ranking than 49 and 45%. So what is that thing that they're not doing, or they need to do, or they need to improve on?
As Felix has said, they have started on the right foot in the sense of public participation. Okay. Because election is not just a product, it's a continuum of process. And this engaging stakeholders is a good step. And they need to do that through and through the process. Because before we just hear issues saying IEBC have given single source tender to ABCD. IEBC has done this. IEBC has done this, but it has a chance to redeem itself. It can involve the public in terms of preparing to this election, especially now with deploying of KM's system, that within the 59 days, that is 56, sorry, that's remaining.
Yes, 56.
The most critical thing is to tell Kenyans that the machines that are being procured are going to work, the system is going to work. They are going to make sure that there is a secure system, that people are trained, people are deployed, there is testing, and make sure that everything works. Without that, then every Kenyan would be convinced that these IEBC will fall into a manual system, whereby
which is
we know
scary
the
for many
consequences.
Kenyans.
That is the thing. They have to get it right on Kenya Integrated Electronic Management System.
All right.
If they score that, maybe they can get few percentages up from my 49.
From the 49. All right, so Felix, I'll hear your comment shortly, but I just want to update our viewers. We understand that President Uhuru Kenyatta has already arrived in Eldoret. Remember that he was going to give a donation at the KCC, really in a bid of what critics say is really to woo the farmers there to give him the vote come August 8th. So he has already arrived there. Remember, after that visit, he's set to go to Nandi to really continue to galvanize his vote in that region. The president is set to commission equipment, state-of-the-art equipment at KCC. And that's, of course, the Kenya Cooperative Creameries. Remember that Deputy President William Ruto already made a 300 million shillings donation earlier. All right, so let's continue with our conversation away from the events at Eldoret. So, Felix, let's talk about what I had asked Moses about. So what is it that they need to do to get to a higher ranking and get the trust of Kenyans such that whoever becomes president come August 8th, they will trust that, things went right?
Well, the 45 and 49 that we've given to IEBC, remember, is an increment from 36%, which is really what the last credible opinion poll on IEBC gave them. And don't forget that as we were going to the 2013 elections, and as a result of the fact that we had a new constitution complete with new institutions, including the IEBC, the public expectation and the public approval rating of the IEBC was at 86%. And then they squandered this public goodwill, and that is why they found themselves at below 40s. Now, IEBC has to realize that we are faced with probably one of the most competitive elections in our history. The stakes are extremely high. We have an incumbent president seeking a re-election. And in this continent, every time an incumbent is seeking a re-election, the stakes are very high. Yeah. But the stakes will not only be high at the national level, the stakes will also be high at the gubernatorial level, the devolved level. So we are faced with an elections like none other. The closest we ever came to a civil war in this country was in 2007, and as a result of the conduct of the then Electoral Commission. The question that I normally ask myself is that is IEBC aware of the responsibility that is bestowed upon them? That is the first question that I normally ask myself. For what needs to be done? Well, over the last, first of all, where has the problem been? Number one, we are seeing a repeat of 2007 all over, 2013 all over again. There has been perception, or at least some media report, that IEBC is preparing or facing the 2017 elections as a divided house. Now, a house divided against itself will not stand. And I'm talking about the differences between the Commission and the Secretariat. That has to be bridged. Number two is exactly what Moses has said. Serious problems in procurement, the most essential materials for these elections. And we had similar problems in 2013. And I'm talking about the KIMS, the technology, and the ballot papers. Now, IEBC has made decisions that will be scrutinized in the fullness of time. Number one, the decision itself, single sourcing, but also number two, the cost implication, especially on KIMS, etc. But now we must realize that for us to get it right, three things must have to be fixed. One, voter register. Number two is the technology has to work. And more so in light of the audit report that we had the other day by KPMG, and that disclosed that we have potentially close to 1 million dead voters. What it means is that we must have a voter EVIDs, electronic voter identification devices that work.
That must work.
Every voter that will participate in 2017 elections will have to go through a mandatory verification process. Number three is the whole aspect of results management. What happens when a voter casts his ballot and the results are declared? And what are the protocols that will be there at the National Tallying Center? These are crucial.
All right.
And I think the only positive thing that we have going for us in this election is the judiciary. And if you look at the conduct of the judiciary and in terms of the decisions that they've rendered in the past, if this election ultimately meets the credibility test, it will be as a large measure on the conduct of the Kenyan judiciary.
All right.
Yes.
I want us to talk about something that you've mentioned, and we'll also talk about the voter register shortly. But Moses, we have 56 days to the election.
Yes.
IEBC went to court and appealed that ruling by the High Court on who really is going to be the final announcer. That announcing became such a big deal, announcing a declaration of the presidential results. Why are they so hell-bent on who says what?
That's a very critical point because, I mean, next week the Court of Appeal will make its own decision or it will give a judgment on that. But you see, a presidential election, I mean, at the center of a presidential election, and you know, in Kenya, presidential election is a motive. And if you delay the announcing of results, or if there is an hitch in that, there is likelihood of setting the country ablaze. And I mean, that is the law. The law says that in the Constitution that the results has to be declared at a polling station. That is basic there. So this will overrule of whether it should be at a constituency or a national tallying center. The primary center of declaration or announcement is a polling station. And that is what has been said. That is the law. So I don't know why is IEBC partisan in this thing. Because you see, the law has said that this is how to do. The High Court has made a decision to that effect. When I see an independent institution like IEBC taking the same position with a political party supported by an Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya who is supposed to defend a constitution and the law, it is now you would see now that IEBC, and that is the public opinion, by the way, that IEBC is teetering towards being a partisan, because that's a position that the court has made a decision on this, and that is very critical, and the Court of Appeal has to get it right in restating the law. There is nothing to interpret about, and it is very critical that we need. If you remember in 2007, the issue of, you find that Kivuitu comes and says he's waiting for a returning officer from Laisamis to come and deliver the results. Yeah? When we have technology, when we have this, you can imagine the anxiety of waiting for a returning officer who God knows where he is, maybe he's got lost or he's been abducted to come and give this thing. So that is as serious as it can get, and that is a very critical decision that we're waiting the Court of Appeal to make and restate the law so that we have that announcement be made at the right point so that within a day we know the election results.
Oh, all right.
Yes.
Felix, let's talk about some of the arguments that IBC, was bringing out. And of course, they said that why should we have all these 290 different announcements across the country? That's one of the arguments that the lawyers brought out. The other thing is they said that, these ROs, the returning officers, could just make, a mistake in just, the numbers or, who won in what constituency. Does that hold water for you?
Absolutely not. And I think I'm one of the very few people who had the privilege of interrogating this issue further during my LLM research. And one of the people that I interviewed was actually the IEBC itself, including presidential candidates as some of the respondents as part of that LLM project. I can promise you, almost everybody agreed, and there was a consensus on this issue, that results need to be counted and declared at the polling station. It's called the finality of election results. Now, the arguments that have been brought forth by the IEBC, especially their lawyers, are completely hogwash. They don't hold. And I can promise you, I think the judiciary has reflected on something that IEBC has not, and that is the quality of elections. And the judicial officers in this country are very consistent over this issue. And I have no doubt that the decision of the Court of Appeal will be consistent with the decision of the High Court. And even if IEBC goes and canvass this issue at the Supreme Court, the results will be the same. This constitutional. Article 86 is clear about the responsibility of the presiding officer at the polling station and the finality of the count at the constituency level. I mean, that is settled. Now, IEBC, and then secondly, where has mischief occurred in the past? If you look at 2007 and 2013 elections, there is more than, and if you look at the 188 cases that were petitioned in the last election, the willful conduct of the IEBC at the National Tallying Center was serious. I mean, results are not interfered with at the polling station. Results are usually interfered with at the National Tallying Center. Number two, IEBC, which other country is doing exactly what, or having the finality of the vote at the polling station? It's Ghana, one of the best models for democracy in this country with consistent credible elections. The way it works in Ghana is as follows. The elections are held at the polling station, and the counting is done there and results declared there. And the political parties in Ghana, especially this party that won us, it came up with an elaborate process of verification and taking the results at the polling station. Once it goes there, then it goes to the constituencies. Now, the role of the National Tallying Center or the Electoral Commission of Ghana sitting in Accra is to collate, meaning to add the results as they came from the constituencies or with a view to declaring the presidential winner. The other country that does it is South Africa. In fact, South Africa is even better in terms of how they do it. The 9 provinces at the National Tallying Center, it's all the results of the 9 provinces are listed by province. And then there is the national tallying, the national results. So, for example, if a polling station in Western Cape declares a result, it automatically updates the column for the Western Cape province and simultaneously updates the National Tallying Center. The Electoral Commission of South Africa, the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, IEC, has at the national level has absolutely no role in altering or verifying. The results are updated automatically, and you can tell, even before they do anything, which party has won.
Interesting.
And you can see that actually, you can dramatize it further by watching at IEBC Tallying Center in 2013, whereby the results of Tiati constituency were being announced, where we have 27,000 registered voters in Tiati constituency. But the returning officer ended up announcing Uhuru Kenyatta to have gotten 50,000 votes.
51,000.
Yes.
So for that, I mean, to just dramatize that is that, you see, there is always trepidation of altering results at the National Tallying Center. Let it be. In any case, these are officials of IEBC. Is IEBC telling us that they don't trust their own officers? They don't trust those guys who are going to now announce the results for the county elections and those for the Senate and members of Parliament.
I'd like to hear what impact does this have on the people. This IEBC, going to the Court of Appeal and trying to have things their way, does it have any impact on how Kenyans now are sitting back and watching it from a distance, how everything is unfolding? Because I was listening to a conversation and somebody was asking, why is the IEBC so confident to take results of the MCA, the governor, the MP from that level?
Yeah.
But then when it comes to the president, it's a whole different story.
Exactly. Yeah.
Felix, will it have any impact on just how Kenyans are viewing the IEBC?
I think this is my concern with IEBC is the inability to read the public mood. Kenyans are united on this issue. And Betty, don't forget, there was a time in our democracy where we were counting at a central precinct in the constituency headquarters.
Right.
And when the IPPG negotiated counting at the polling station, it was intended to deal and cure the mischief of interfering with the results through multiple layers of accountability. And when we made a decision as a country to count at the polling station, it goes without saying that the finality of the count at that stage was sacrosanct. You can't negotiate it any further.
Right.
And the IEBC, instead of taking their time and ensuring that as crucial aspect of this electoral cycle and preparations are finalized, they're wasting time in the Court of Appeal. And potentially will go to the High Court, the Supreme Court, by the way.
Yeah.
They
With
will,
56 days.
yes, they will potentially go to the Supreme Court.
All right, Moses, the impact.
The impact is perception. Everything is about perception. What is our perception with IEBC? Are they going to deliver a credible election? But you see, when you see a position that is being taken, and I agree with Felix that these are guys in an ivory tower, they don't really understand what the public is saying about them. So my only worry is about the perception. Once people have a perception that you're not going to deliver a credible election, that is the beginning of collapse of integrity in the election system. So that is my main worry about IEBC, and they should have to claim that credibility now before it is too late.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll ask a hard question. How is the Court of Appeal going to go about this? Is it going to? I know it's a tough one, but I don't know if you listened to the arguments that are both from the opposition, from Maina Kiai and his team, and also from IEBC. I don't know how would it go, considering it's only 56 days to the elections. Are we likely really to go in a way that will head us to the Supreme Court?
Let me tell you one thing. If you look at the decisions rendered by the different courts, the magistrate courts, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court,
Right.
in the last elections, the 2013 petitions, the most progressive and robust electoral law jurisprudence came from the Court of Appeal.
Okay.
And I can promise you, I have no doubt in my mind that the Court of Appeal will apply, the honorable judges of the Court of Appeal will apply their minds very crucially on this issue.
Okay.
And I think they will give us a progressive decision that is intended to secure and uphold the principles of voting as provided for in Article 81, and that is an election that is accurate, verifiable, credible, and that is reflective of the wishes of the people. I have no doubt about that.
No doubt about that. All right, let's continue the conversation and talk about something else that you talked about, the voter register, something very critical in this election. So we got the results of that audit, and 92,000, and everybody's asking, okay, fine, you're saying that, you're thinking it's 1 million, but you can only immediately, rule out 92,000.
Yes.
I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I mean, it is I've had a very simplistic conversation that some of the errors in the register are just clerical, I mean, when the KPMG audit says that there are about 2.9 million voters whose details are inconsistent and there are inaccuracies in terms of date of birth, gender, and all that, that should ring a bell. That is a serious thing. You can actually be returned from a polling station because your name does not tally with your ID number and all that. And you cannot just say those are clerical issues that can be dealt with. And coming back to your question of saying dead voters, saying that they're potentially, they say 1.5 million Kenyans over the age of 18 died between 2013 to December 2016. And IEBC only deleted 30 before that. And now KPMG says we have realized there are 92,000, and IEBC say they are going to go ahead and do that. What about the rest? How are we going to deal with it? Because we should have an assurance that from the 1.3 potential dead voters, should also immediately be deleted from the register. And also the inaccuracies in the audit report should also be corrected. And my point is that this is not a rocket science. In 2015, the president launched something called IPRS, that is Integrated Population Registration System, whereby all the data is available. In this country, Betty, when you're born, the government knows it. When you turn 18, the government knows it. When you die, the government knows it. And the data is there. So what is it that we are saying? That we cannot be able to identify the other 1.3 million. And in that report, the damning thing that also I saw in one of the statements says that we are still to receive information or data from registrar, civil registrar of deaths to help us delete this number. That is a joke.
And that's
that means that this guy sabotaged the audit.
Okay, well, let's sabotage. Let's hear what Felix has to say. I mean, talk about institutions. I mean, KPMG cannot do this alone. They need the support of all these institutions, and they're still waiting for information from this civil registration. How is that?
Well, I think I agree with Moses. Ultimately, as a long-term reform issue, this country will have no choice but to align its voter register or its voter registration processes with other forms of national registration databases. And that is how it happens in Rwanda. Unfortunately, this is a model that we can borrow from Rwanda. But also, that is how it happens in South Africa. As it says, in South Africa, the government, everybody is registered when they turn 16 years of age. But the system of voter registration is aligned to the to the civil registry in such a way that immediately you hit 18, it automatically updates the voter register by itself. That is how it works. So that's a long-term agenda. Now, the question is, and unfortunately I adopted a more, and having reflected on the voter register from 2012, comparatively around the world, there are 3 tests to ascertain the efficacy of a register. Number 1, is it geographical? It is comprehensive in terms of its geographical spread. Number 2, is it an accurate and verifiable roll? And number 3, is it authoritative? These are the only tests to test a voter register. Okay. Now, if you apply this test vis-a-vis 2013 elections, you can just consider this. To the extent that IEBC made a reference to the so-called Green Book, defeated the verifiability and the authoritativeness of that role. And so we've had a problem with the voter register. And I thought that between 2013 and 2017, the best way to have cured that was to start the voter registration process all over again. But again, I considered that time was, we had run out of time. The question then is, in light of the revelations by this audit, it confirms that the register as it is currently does not meet these 3 tests. Now, what can we do between now and 56 days of the elections? There's, of course, very little that we can do. What we can do to ensure the credibility of that process and to cure the so-called, the potential of the possibility of dead voters standing up to vote is to have a functioning electronic voter identification device. They did it in Nigeria. Everybody who voted in 2015, and they had similar problems, went through the mandatory process of verification. Okay. That is the only way to ensure that only those who are alive vote in 2017.
Yes.
Whether this technology will work, IEBC must ensure that it does.
And it's interesting that you say that, because the voter register is really one thing, but who gets to vote is the other. So how important is it that the IEBC gets this electronic process right?
It is very, very critical. And as Felix has said, the only way, because of the timing now, the voter verification process is just concluded. Audit report is out. How are we going to ensure that we will have credible election in light of this damning report that there are possibility of inconsistencies, inaccuracies, and even dead voters? The only way to do that is to get it right in the KM system, that the only way to verify, and actually that's what KPMG said, the primary base or the primary verification process, identification of voter should be through the BVR or electronic EVT. Yes. So that must be the primary, and we must insist that so that we have clear people who are voting are eligible. Another thing also which we concentrate much on the dead voters is that there is likelihood of someone's details not properly captured or biometrics not properly captured.
Yes.
And therefore this person is disenfranchised, because when they say there are 2 million people whose details do not sync or they are not in order, then there's likelihood of someone basically going to the polling station and your details are not there and you're turned away and your right to vote is violated. It's a very serious thing also that we need to see, that all the voters in this country have the right to vote by making sure that, of course, some of them failed they did not do the verification. Yes, that it is very important. And another thing also maybe Felix can advise from the policy perspective is that under the law in that register of voters, after the verification, they are supposed to upload the revised data, the revised voter register in a website or in a portal. Yeah, but I mean, I think that is also another thing that needs to be done, because it is just an update on the portal. It is not. It's
At
not
this
a
point,
rocket.
everything looks so,
So
complex, so complex.
So
With those- all
that's
these
also
portals.
another thing that can be able to help maybe, but I don't know if they would do that.
All right, Felix, your last comment on that.
They should do that. And I mean, because an election is only as clean. Credibility begins with the voter registration process. And if you look at elections are nowadays not rigged in the pedestrian way that it used to happen when this continent transitioned to multi-party democracy. It is at the voter registration and the way of handling the results. And EVID's electronic voter identification device will also help over and above the dead voters and the problems, like, for example, that Moses has spoken about, is what happens in 3 regions in this country to ensure and to guarantee that only those who turn out to vote actually vote on election day. Is if we have EVIDs that works, then the situation, and I've said this consistently, what happens in Luo-Nyanza, where I come from? What happens in Kalenjin Rift Valley, where my brother here comes from, Moses? And what happened in the entire Mount Kenya region? The strongholds of the major political parties that attract somewhere between 95% to 100 and over 100% turnout is a fallacy. It doesn't happen anywhere, even amongst the most contented citizens. Even in countries that have mandatory compulsory voting, it doesn't happen. To cure that is to have EVIDs that work. To cure this problem in these 3 regions is to have EVIDs that work.
EVIDs that work.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. So we'll continue the conversation shortly, but also something as a heads up is that the CEO for